Hello, my friend. I'm truly glad you've joined me today. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone close to you. It really helps more than you know. And I'd love to hear from you. Tell me where you're watching from, your city and country. I read every comment with gratitude. Now let's begin. Eli Ward always started his mornings the same way. Before the sun had fully risen, he'd be up, brewing his strong black coffee while the world outside was still asleep. He took comfort in routines. His work as an electrician was predictable, steady, and precise. Every morning, he'd load his tools into his old pickup truck, double-checking every wrench and wire tester like clockwork before heading out. That day was no different. His assignment was an electrical inspection at a newly renovated home on the outskirts of town. Simple job, nothing unusual, exactly how Eli liked it. When he arrived, the homeowner, a distracted man on his phone, pointed toward the fuse box and disappeared upstairs to take a call. Alone on the ground floor, Eli settled into the work, his hands steady as he replaced a faulty outlet. He didn't mind working alone. Solitude was where he thrived. No noise, no distractions, no surprises. But that morning a surprise did come, one that would shatter everything. As Eli stepped outside to grab a tool he'd forgotten in his truck, something caught his eye. Across the quiet street, a figure approached the house next door. His heart froze. It was her, his wife, Julia. She moved with certainty, her steps light but deliberate, as if she'd walked this path many times before. Eli stood there, unable to move, watching as she reached the neighbor's door. Before she could even knock, the door swung open. And there stood Brian, someone Eli recognized vaguely from around town, smiling wide, clearly expecting her. Then came the moment Eli would never forget. They kissed. Not nervously, not hesitantly. It was practiced, comfortable, familiar. Without even looking back, Julia stepped inside and the door closed behind her. Eli's hands tightened into fists, but his face remained eerily calm. He swallowed the lump in his throat, squared his shoulders and walked across the street, not hesitating for a second. When he knocked, it wasn't a polite tap. It was 3 sharp, deliberate pounds that rattled the doorframe. Brian answered, his face twisting in confusion, likely trying to place Eli. Before Brian could speak, Eli's voice cut through the air like steel. "Bring her out. Or I walk in." Brian's face drained of color. Seconds later, Julia appeared in the doorway, her face paling as her eyes met Eli's. She opened her mouth, whispering, "Eli, But he raised his hand, cutting her off. "No, we're done. You made your choice. Live with it." Without another word, Eli turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, speechless, stunned and exposed. Back at their home, Eli moved with quiet precision. He gathered her clothes, shoes, every trace of her from their shared life, carefully folding, packing, methodical even in heartbreak. He loaded her belongings into his truck and drove back to Bryant Street. Neighbors watched through their blinds as Eli, stone-faced, laid every box and bag neatly on the sidewalk in front of Brian's house. There were no shouts, no arguments, just steady, deliberate movements. A few bystanders murmured in hushed voices, but Eli didn't care. He was drawing a boundary, one box at a time. When the last item was placed, Eli calmly closed the truck's tailgate and drove away. That night, his house felt strangely different, lighter somehow. In the days that followed, Eli kept his routines. He woke early, drank his coffee, and went to work. But now, the silence of his empty house felt different. Not lonely, but peaceful. The second toothbrush in the bathroom remained untouched. The other side of the bed stayed cold. Yet, instead of sorrow, there was relief. Julia, however, was drowning. The weight of her decisions grew heavier by the day. Life at Brian's wasn't the fantasy she had imagined. She couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Eli's words. His calm dismissal, the look in his eyes that said everything without shouting. Brian tried to comfort her. He brought her coffee, cooked dinner, tried to make her laugh, but her spirit was dim. The thrill had vanished, replaced by guilt, by a quiet grief she couldn't outrun. Meanwhile, Eli continued purging their shared past. He removed photos, folded away quilts they once bought together, and rearranged the furniture. He shredded old letters, threw out keepsakes, and even changed the ringtone that once made him smile. On a Saturday, he filed for divorce without ceremony. No arguments, no second chances. "I'm not here to fight," he told the attorney. "Just file it." Julia tried to reach him. Endless texts, voicemails, tearful emails. She begged for another chance, saying she still loved him, that she was lost, that she wanted to fix what they had broken. Eli read every word, then deleted them all without replying. In his heart, there was nothing left to say. Back at Brian's, things quickly unraveled. Julia grew distant. She stayed holed up in the bedroom, avoiding conversations about their future. She snapped over little things, withdrew emotionally. The spark that once drew her to Brian had gone out. Brian, frustrated, realized she wasn't the woman he thought she was. Their connection faded fast. Julia spent more time at work, picking up extra shifts just to escape the house. It wasn't long before she found herself falling into old patterns again. She met Nathan, a new physical therapist at the hospital. Kind, attentive, good at listening. They started texting, then meeting for lunches. Soon Julia was lying again, inventing excuses, sneaking around like before. She hadn't learned a thing. One Friday evening, Brian came home early, uneasy about her recent behavior. When he walked in, he saw it. Julia sitting on the couch, laughing with Nathan, completely at ease. Brian didn't yell. He simply said coldly, "You have 2 minutes." Julia sat frozen. The other man left quietly. No words exchanged. Brian packed her belongings into a suitcase and threw it onto the front lawn without a word. He closed the door with finality, leaning against it, breathless and defeated. And in that crushing moment, he realized something devastating. He had become the very man he once mocked. The betrayal he helped Julia inflict on Eli had returned full circle. Now he knew exactly how it felt. Shame burned through him, not just for Julia but for himself. Days later, Julia sent Brian messages, full of the same tired excuses and half-hearted regrets she'd once offered Eli. But Brian, now facing the consequences of his own choices, ignored her. As for Eli, he had already moved on. When a mutual friend mentioned Julia's latest scandal, Eli simply smiled, a small, quiet smile that spoke volumes. He didn't feel joy or revenge, just closure. He understood now, some people don't change. They run in circles, chasing excitement, only to end up in the same ruins they created. Eli's peace didn't come from watching her fall. It came from knowing he'd survived it. Weeks later, over beers with his old friend Derek, Eli finally shared the whole story. Derek listened in silence, then chuckled softly, raising his glass. "Lesson learned, man," Derek said. "Never trust a personal trainer with a perfect smile." Eli laughed for the first time in months. "And never settle for less than you deserve," he replied, clinking glasses. Julia, meanwhile, moved in with a distant cousin. She cried often, burdened by the damage she'd caused. Rumors swirled at the hospital. Her new flame had been transferred quietly. No one reached out to her. In that cold silence, she finally realized, there are some losses you don't feel until you've lost everything. Eli, far removed from it all, simply kept living. No drama, no farewells, just peace and no looking back. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, sometimes the quietest endings carry the loudest lessons. Where are you watching from? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. See you in the next one.